So this nation building malarkey has been going pretty well as of late, but I felt that it was about time that we stepped things up to the next level. And then this year came along. Oh, and I went to a Sirens game in Malta over the weekend, so let's talk about it. We have the biggest budget by far that we've had to play with at any point in this save, and that's what we're going to be trying to spend over on stream right about now. So join us over there once you've caught up on all the stuff from the most recent season over here. The VODs of all the streams can be found on the second channel, linked in the description. You know how it is. So we came into season 9 of Building a Nation with Sirens in Malta with two main goals. Try to continue the form that we showed last season and try to get back into the Champions League phase for the second year in a row, and hope that with the new tools that we have at our disposal for the loan farm, we could start to build those guys up and finally get another team to join us in some kind of European competition. As always, we've been mighty busy in the transfer market trying to strengthen the squad, especially the defense, as we felt that that was a part of the team that was sorely lacking in true quality and without anyone coming forward really for the future. As for the outs though, there have been literally none of note over the course of the last year, so for once we get to skip that step entirely and jump straight to the bit that you'll want to see, and that's players that have actually joined us this year. So let's jump into that. First of the ins was Pablo Medina, who joined us for £150,000 from Millonarios in Colombia. Now with him, he was mostly supposed to be sort of a backup third choice option, as with the wingbacks doing a lot of work, we figured that injuries would happen and we would probably need at least 3 capable players on both sides, and he has sort of become that. Admittedly only 5 appearances this is, well 7 if you count the 2 substitutes as well. A couple of assists though for him as well, which is nice to see, mostly featured in the cup, but it's good to have him here even if his contract is a little bit large. Next we have genuinely one of our most expensive signings ever, and that is Jean Dong-Suk, who joined us, and yes, that is his actual real name, from Ulsan Hyundai for £1.4 million. Now the first thing you're going to notice as I show you some of these players going in is the values of those players versus how much we paid for them, and that is because we have reached the dreaded moment which seems to have hit us, and I think it hits most of the saves in 2032, where the value drop happens. Now this is not a thing that is unique to the Malta save or the Malta database that we're using. This is something that will happen a lot of the time to pretty much any save that plays outside of the main leagues that are in the game. Now even ones that are in the game as well, if they're smaller and further down, this will happen to. For some reason, around about between 8 to 10 years into the save, all of a sudden all of your player values will just disappear into the ether. To give you an idea, we had a guy that was worth £50 million. He's now worth £1.8 million. Now I felt like 50 was way too exorbitant for how much he was actually worth in the grand scheme of things. He's probably, for being realistic for the level we're at, more like a 10 to 12 million pound player given the quality of the player that he is. It's not a 1.8 million pound player, and that is very annoying, but we'll talk about that a little bit more, so just bear that in mind because that's finally happened. The point is, we really did like Jean Dong-Suk. He's actually managed to find a loan as well to Sweetie United, which is a big deal to have a guy with 5-star potential actually out on loan, and 4 goals, 4 assists for them in the season. Not amazing, frankly. If I'm being truthfully, he's not fantastic for them, but nevertheless, he is going to be there for another 2 seasons as well, as we have managed to get that loan extended. Now we move into the bulk of the signings, and one thing you are going to notice is there's just an extremely large amount of centre-backs. We were really weak there and wanted some guys that could maybe step in now, but could actually have some progression to go beyond what we currently have, because that was a big issue for us. And the first of those was Leonardo Teixeira, who joins us from Nacional in Uruguay. And the thing is, we were just trying to find some centre-backs that could head a football, basically. It's a toughie to do that in FM24, I must realise that with you, but there you go. I think he's solid. £2 million in total might make him our most expensive signing ever, and obviously with the value now being appalling, it was like £13 million. You know how it goes. Needless to say, I think he's a solid player, has really only made the 1 appearance for us, did score on his debut for the club, but he's got solid mentals, solid tent poles for the defending side of things, with his heading, marking and tackling being decent. Not the best jumping reach, but I think he's well-rounded enough that he could develop into being a decent player. Probably not one for the loan farm yet. I don't think he'd even go anyway. Then on the opposite end of the value spectrum, we have Juan Jose Nieto. Now you'll notice he's got a value of 0 here. There is a reason for that, and it's not that he's actually worth 0. But the point is, we paid £81,000 for him from Real Oviedo. Did not think that was actually going to happen, but again, he's solid. Actually has a bit of jumping reach, good on both feet, not amazingly slow, really solid balance as well. And just picking up a few of these guys, the idea was we scattergun a few solid looking centre backs, and if some of them grow, fantastic. If some of them don't, that's also amazing. You'll notice that he's actually out on loan at Hammerin, and that is the reason his value is set at 0. We're going to talk about that again. In fact, no, let's talk about it now to get it up front. So in the last video, I discussed a load of new sort of toolkit stuff that we had for the loan farm, little things that you could do to make things a little bit easier, and something was pointed out to me in the comments, and I really do want to highlight it because it is a game changer. And that is, when I first talked talked about the part exchange method, I mentioned that the first time we used it, it worked insanely well, and we'd never really seen it be quite as successful since then. And this comment from Thomas Santos, which unfortunately I can't find, but I will just shout you out now, Thomas, sensational point, is what highlighted the difference. And basically, the simple fact is, if the players are transfer listed and set to 0 asking price value, then for some reason, clubs are more interested in taking them on loan. Because what it seems to do is it drives up interest from other clubs in your league, which you can then offer them to them for loans instead of paid transfers, and they're more than happy to accept a loan instead of a paid transfer, because in their mind, it's probably a better deal for them anyway. And as a result, we've been setting a lot of the players that we want to put into the loan farm to transfer listed if they're on a low enough contract, like youth contracts, breakthrough prospect, hot prospect, or fringe player, that you can get away with it and they won't complain. Set the value to 0, they'll always be happy with that, and all of a sudden you'll start getting some interest from other clubs in your league. When you see the interest, offer them out to that club, and they seem to take the bites. Believe me, when you see the size of our loan farm now, you'll understand how well this works. Worst case scenario, if the interest's there and they're still not bidding for them on loan, you can then just do the part exchange with the loan as part of the part exchange, and they generally do accept it, and they always seem to want less money out of it too, which is nice. The reason this was so important is because when we were doing the part exchange method, that January window a few seasons ago, and it worked amazingly, it was coming off the back of us trying to give away players for free to other clubs in our league, which meant they were all transfer listed and set to 0 value. And that was just a side effect of what we were doing, but that's the reason it works so well. It's because of the transfer list and set to 0 value. It makes a huge difference. Next, we have Yunus El Amrani, a Moroccan international centre-back that we've picked up from Herenveen, a club that we're not normally going to be buying players from at this stage, because generally speaking, Dutch players cost quite a lot of money. I know he's Moroccan, but he came through a Dutch side. The reason we liked him was very simple. Okay defensive technicals. His mentals aren't amazing, but he does have that 18 jumping reach, and he is a proper physical monster. And having a couple of guys like that around is pretty damn useful. Hasn't actually featured in a game yet. We would like to maybe get him a loan this summer to see if he can develop a little bit more, even if it has cost us quite a bit of cash. You can see we've dropped good money on quite a lot of centre-backs, and ironically, some of the ones we've paid the most for haven't even turned out to be the best, because there's one guy that has really stood out, is this guy. This is Damien Tunkara. Yet again, Generation Foot have blessed us during this save. It feels like them, ASEC Mimosas and Diambars, now they're normally fantastic teams to producing a lot of talent, but especially in this save, they have been an absolute talent factory on a level I've not had in one of my other saves just yet. Anyway, needless to say, he's fabulous. I mean, he just is absolutely fabulous. If you just look at him on a standard central defender role, heading is not awful, and in this game, that's considered good. 17 tackling as well. Great mentals. He's got unflappable media handling style, which means there's a decent amount of professionalism in there too. 6'5", good on both feet, 15 jumping reach, solid physicals. He, for me, has been the one that has really stood out and dropped straight into that first team. He does have a contract extension clause, so that's fine. £190,000. I think he is by far the best of the bunch. Now has 3 Senegal caps as well. He is brilliant, and I think he could be part of our backline for a good few years to come just yet, given that he's only 20 as well. Don't know how much more room he has for progression given this, but we'll see. But the signing of centre-backs didn't stop there, as we picked up Silvano Gorgoni. Now, the main reason we wanted him, obviously his attributes are fairly solid, does lack a little bit in some of the physicals beyond his jumping reach, but technicals, mentals really solid. The reason we liked him is because he had 7 caps for San Marino, and we thought that was cool because San Marinese players don't come along and be very good very often. Unfortunately, man has now decided to declare for the Czech Republic, and it's like, he may well get into the Czech Republic national team one day, perhaps, but he could have been an absolute legend for San Marino, and it would have been so cool. But yeah, I also hate the fact that the game like wipes away all their caps from their profile pages when they switch nationalities now, which is a shame because he had, I think it was at least 7 caps, might have even been more, honestly. Yet another centre-back was brought in, this time Ethan Baez. £1.2 million not well spent, particularly as he's older, doesn't have the progression. We liked him more just because of his actual attributes. Like, he is good as he is, but I don't think he's going to get much better. And 4k a week is a lot to be spending, but he's okay. Also has that red competitive streak, which is not ideal when you've got a team that does have a habit of getting random red cards. And the last of the signings, hey look, friends, it's not a centre-back. Would you believe it? We signed a player that wasn't a centre-back. It's Armando Perez, 1.3 million from Atletico Bucaramanga. Not sure on him. And the fact is, he's a winger. So the plan was actually maybe he'd go into the loan farm, but he just looked like he had decent enough attributes that it was sort of silly to not try and take him on. But our scouts have been really letting us down lately in terms of the potential side of things. It does feel like we scout a lot of guys that seem to have high potential upon joining us, and just like, no. Occasionally it does happen the other way, but it's certainly been more the other side of things this time around. Now, we do have a couple of other players joining us in the summer, and there's one particular guy that I want to show you now because I'm very excited about him, and I cannot believe he was willing to talk to us. And this is he. This is Jose Padilla. He's a Peruvian attacking midfielder / striker. We're not really sure, but what I do think is he could be the perfect trequartista in the system that we currently play. Let me just sort of highlight his attributes and you can sort of see why I might think that. He's joining us. How much is he joining us for? £275,000. The dribbling, finishing, first touch is superb. He can actually pass a ball. He's got excellent vision. He's a model citizen at the age of 18, which is fabulous. He's already got the perfect personality as well. It feels like he has all the tools to grow into a fantastic player, and frankly his starting attributes are very, very good indeed, which makes me think that it's all going to come down to what his potential is actually like. If he has a high potential ceiling, he could be a potential world beater perhaps, but he really does need to work on his physicals. That will come with age as well, but he has got quite a large sort of deficit on the starting point of that. He's a very technical player and great brain-wise, but he is lacking that sort of physical ability, which is definitely going to have to come, and could see him get bullied in certain games. But I'm still very excited about him, and I feel like long-term, he might be our starting trequartista potentially for like a decade, if he turns into the player that I hope he could be. But how did all of that translate over to the league? I mean, the first thing you're going to note is how much closer it was for us this year. 66 points is still a good record. Like, only 5 games weren't wins, when I think we sort of set an insane pace towards the start of this save, to the point where you're looking at it going, under 70? Useless. But in fact, that's still 21 wins out of 26. But what you'll note is that Hamrun had a massive step up this year, going from 54 points last year back to being a 60, and they closed the gap. It's only a 6-point gap between us and them, and that really only came from them losing a game, like two games from the end of the season. They were 3 points behind us for pretty much the entire year. And then Goodyear in there as well with 54 points, Hibernian on 49, Zabar in there with 46. You'll see that there's starting to become a gap between the top 6 and everybody else. There's 8 points between 6th and 7th. Luta slightly disappointing this year, and you can see the goal differences of other than Hibernian and Luta. It's definitely improving, and we're starting to establish a kind of hegemonic top 6, which in the early stages of saves like this is so goddamn important, because if we keep getting the same teams in Europe every single year, the money keeps going to the same teams, they keep strengthening, and they can make a huge impact, and that's really, really exciting to see. Although, admittedly, the 2 teams we had in Europe last year were Zabar and Luta. So this year it's going to be different with Goodyear and Hibernian, but needless to say, I think they're going to cope with it, and Goodyear look to be a dark horse for something quite spectacular in the coming seasons if they keep playing as well as they are, because look at that goal difference. Unfortunately, Senglea and Nashar went down very, very easily. Not quite, Marsa levels of last year, though. And speaking of Marsa from last season, they did actually come straight back up with Slima. This is the first time in the save, I believe, that both relegated teams have bounced straight back to the top flight, which is a good thing that it hasn't happened too frequently, because obviously there are parachute payments that we have set up. Khaled El Nabris with 31 goals in the league. He's over a goal a game for Marsa. They also had another guy there, Guillaume, with 17 goals. What a season for them it's been. We also say goodbye to Santa Lucia, who were in the top flight at the start of the save and become the first team that were in the top flight to drop all the way down to the 3rd tier. Not ideal from them. They never came back once they got relegated. Another former top flight side who are currently struggling to regain their status in said league are Gazira United, and they just so happen to be Sirens' opponent in real life at the weekend in the game that Pog and I attended. There had originally been a plan to basically vlog the entire weekend, but SD card issues on Saturday cost us all of the footage, minus this one random one of me walking and swinging my arms around at a rate that is far more than any human should. We then couldn't take the big camera into the game on Sunday, which left obviously using Pog's phone because mine is absolute crap. Either way, we had an absolutely superb time, and Malta is truly a beautiful country, especially the walled city of Medina, which is absolutely unbelievable. And a huge shout out to current Sirens goalkeeper and goalkeeping coach, or under-19 coach of the save, Andrea Casar, who actually hooked us up with tickets for the game. So once again, Andrea, seriously, thank you so much. That's really, really kind of you. Gonna move on from this now before it turns into the vibe of that extended family that you don't know very well, inviting you over to look at 7 hours of holiday photos without allowing you a bathroom break. We move to us in Europe. Now, unfortunately, that match data caching issue is still present. I thought we'd fixed it. We haven't. I think that is just the norm in FM this year. What I'm going to do through the remaining recaps of this save is just make a save point in the middle of the season so we can access the nitty-gritty of those matches earlier, but unfortunately we still don't have them. I did manage to get a little bit more this time with a slightly earlier save point, but it is very annoying. So we move. We made light work of the first qualifying round of the Champions League against Estonian side Paide Lina Miskond with a 7-0 victory, quickly followed by a 6-0 victory. Relatively easy. This then put us into a slightly tougher affair against Shamrock Rovers, which we certainly didn't make easy for ourselves in the first leg by going behind and then conceding late on to only win by 3-2. Luckily, we made no mistakes in that sense in the second leg to win 5-1 and move into the third round, where we'd face off against Karabakh, and it didn't go super well, as despite flying into an early lead, we managed to concede 2 goals in the dying minutes to their only 2 shots of the game. just how it goes sometimes, isn't it? Luckily, we then improved dramatically in the home game with a 5-0 victory to push us through to the final round of qualifying, the playoff round. But we would draw a much more difficult opponent than last season in the form of Red Bull Salzburg. Definitely not a game we expected to have any chance in. And that's exactly how it went in the first leg. We actually played quite well, but then fell 2-0 down to 2 long-range goals before Melbourne did manage to grab us a goal back. But going to Austria with a deficit already was not what we wanted. However, things certainly turned around as we scored 2 goals in the first 10 minutes to immediately erase the deficit. They got one back. We went back to 3-1 in front before being 3-2 and 4-4 in aggregate in the 49th minute, feeling pretty good. But then it happened. The red card that changed the game. They went down to 10 men. We suddenly started to dominate the match. It went to extra time, but we got the goals through Jar Jar and John Guerrero to send us through to the Champions League big group, as we've been calling it, for the second season in a row, and all the riches that come along with it, which, given what we know about the finances now, it's going to be very useful in coming seasons. Luckily, I have a version of the save from February that allows us to see some of the group stage matches properly, at least. The task at hand, now that we were actually in the group for the second season in a row, was to try to at least match or better the points we'd got last year, which was 5, and that felt potentially doable when our first game was against Fenerbahce, except it wasn't. We played fantastically well in this game. Like, Melbourne had a brilliant game, just passes for days, managed to score a goal as well, but unfortunately we just didn't quite get what we deserved out of this one. I felt that we should have won this, and this is definitely a winnable game. Like, at home, at Ta'ali, this is the kind of games that you've got to be winning if you're gonna progress, and we just didn't do it. But that theme was not present in the next game, as we went to Celtic Park and pulled off an unbelievable victory, and a thoroughly deserved one. Melbourne, yet again the hero. He scored a lot of goals in the Champions League this season. It's actually insane. At one point he was literally the top scorer in the entire tournament, and we thoroughly deserved this result. So to take 4 points from those games, not too bad. It actually could have been 2-0 if it wasn't for this. Go on, slip him through. Off the bar! Long get. Oh my god. That better have been offside. We were then very comfortably brought back down to earth by Dortmund, though. We held on until the 60th minute in this one, but they gave away a stupid penalty, long-range strike, own goal. Terrible time for us, but, you know, Dortmund are a very good side and better than any of the opponents we've played thus far. We were expecting it. We thought we'd give it a go, though, being at least at home. Although, weirdly, this one wasn't played in Ta'ali. This one was played in the Tony Bozina Stadium. I don't know what's going on. We then put up what I would consider to be a genuinely stellar performance away at St James's Park, and I think we were unlucky to lose this game by 3-0. We really struggled in the early stages, conceding goals to, well, Willock, David and Emil Smith-Rowe, but then actually had loads of chances throughout the rest of the game and just could not score. So all of a sudden, we'd gone from looking at 4 points, maybe thinking we should have had more, to having 4 points from 4 games and thinking, you know what, maybe there's still an outside chance of qualifying if we could get a good result against Dinamo Zagreb in our next game. Probably the most winnable match we had left in the group. So naturally, we played quite poorly. We took the lead through Henry Ouattara in the 33rd minute and then actually played quite well for the rest of that point. But then in the final sort of 15 minutes, Dinamo Zagreb threw everything at us. They won the penalty, which was a totally needless tackle, and ended up drawing 1-1. So it was 5 points from 5 games, which had at least averaged out to the same amount of points that we got the whole of last time around, but we felt that we could have had so many more points on the board potentially in there, with maybe getting a win against Fenerbahce, maybe managing to sneak something against Newcastle. Not really sure. Either way, we'd evened it up, and we still had 3 matches to go, but they were against Villarreal, Atletico and Tottenham. But we pulled off a genuine fantastic result. Now, we got a draw against Villarreal last season at home, which is, we're playing a lot of the same teams, I'm noticing. They took the lead through Jeremy Pino early on. Longelo equalised for us in the 56th minute before Melbourne yet again gave us what I would consider to be a very deserving victory and pushed us to 8 points. And at this point, we're thinking, genuinely, on average, 9 points will get you out of the Champions League to the knockouts. And if we could get 1 more point against either Spurs or Atletico, we'd have that chance. And we got a draw at home against Spurs last season. And then this happened. We went to Atletico. We went to Madrid and won 2-0. Melbourne with an early goal. Pierre Camgren and Lend added a second one. Hold my hands up. We were very, very fortunate. You can see from the statistics, we did not deserve to win this game, but I guess it's kind of a case of what goes around comes around, and that was a big result. Took us to 11 points and pretty much wrapped up qualification for the knockouts of the Champions League with a game in hand still. And then we decided to flex by beating Tottenham, and deserving to as well. Pierre Camgren and Lend, 1-0 win for us, another great finish for him, and suddenly we had 14 points on the board by winning our last 3 games in the group against very tough opponents. Couldn't beat Fenerbahce, couldn't beat Dinamo Zagreb, but hey, we'll go out and beat Atletico, Spurs and Villarreal anyway, and this was just a sudden turnaround in fortunes. It did help that we got some players back from AFCON, which made a big difference at that point, but still, it was a massive moment for us, because all that put us 10th in the Champions League. We went from being right the way down here last season and getting 5 points to gaining 9 more points this year. We only scored 9 goals, conceded 10 during this period, but hey, we kept it tight at the back, we got the results when we needed it, and well, we were literally only 2 points off of getting top 8. absolutely unbelievable. I don't think we'll do this again next year, even if we do strengthen, because there was a little bit of fortune in there. But it was just great to see. We yet again finish above Bayern Munich, who've just won, well, they've won 2 of their last 16 games in the group stage of the Champions League. So all in all, extremely happy with that. And the benefit of getting top 16, if you like, is that you get a better draw in the next round. Except we got probably one of the toughest draws possible, and that was against Atletico. Again, 17th place Atletico. We would play them in the Champions League knockouts. And obviously we were feeling confident given that we'd already beaten them, but the fact is, we were fortunate in that game. We knew they'd be out for revenge. And revenge was exactly what they got, unfortunately. Andre Santos with a goal, 2 for Tommaso Baldanzi, and it was 3-0. Very comfortable, completely deserved. We maybe could have snuck a goal in here, but, Jorgensen had an absolutely dreadful game, and losing 3-0 in the away game didn't give us a lot of confidence. But we did at least put down something. Despite going 3-0 down in this one as well and being 6-0 down on aggregate and feeling a little bit sorry for ourselves, we did at least manage to pick up 2 late goals in this one. We also got a red card, as you'll see, from Julian Palacio in the 26th minute, which meant any hopes we had were absolutely dead. But we did still score 2 late ones through Melman and Jar Jar to not give us hope, but at least make the scoreline look a little bit less silly. And the fact is, Atletico conceded 2 goals against us when we had 10 men. And that's shame on them, but needless to say, it was still fantastic, which then put a lot of pressure on the other Maltese sides, as we needed to start seeing some signs of life out of them. But with the improvements to the loan farm this year, which we'll get to a little bit later, and believe me, they are massive, we were hoping for better things, and we started to see them. First up, we had Zabar in the second round of the Europa Conference League, and they got a relatively tough draw against Zorya of Ukraine, but managed to beat them home and away to progress through, and that simply would not have happened last season. Unfortunately, their journey then came to an end against Maccabi Haifa, but they still fought hard in that, and there's definitely signs of progress. These teams were going out in the second round easily to teams worse than these just 2 seasons ago. Next up were Luta in the second round themselves, as they picked up, albeit a draw against KOPS of Finland, but then managed to get a 4-2 victory to progress through to the next round themselves. Unfortunately, they then drew Trabzonspor of Turkey, probably one of the worst draws they could have got at that stage. They were then handed a 3-0 defeat, and we thought, okay, that's over. That seems to be the level that they've kind of hit their max at this point. That was until the second leg, where they went and beat the Turkish side 5-3, and we're only 1 goal away from potentially taking it to extra time. And if they're capable of beating a team like Trabzonspor 5-3, slightly potentially more favourable draws could see them go quite far in this, and this is the sort of thing I'm on about. These results would not have happened just 1 year ago, I don't think. And lastly, we have Hamrun, but they were, of course, in the Europa League, which meant that we weren't expecting much from them, and we got exactly that, as they went out 5-3 to Rijeka of Croatia, dropping down into the 3rd round of the Conference League. Second round. They were drawn against Ordubasi Shymkent in the next round, winning 5-1 on aggregate, but that annoying dropped points in the home game is just missing coefficient points in games like that is very, very important, considering they are few and far between. This then set up a tough match against a relatively strong St. Pat's side from Ireland, and that very much showed as they actually lost the home game 2-1 in one of the more disappointing results that we've had for Hamrun in the save up to this point. But they didn't let that stop them, as they went to Ireland and won 5-2 after extra time to progress themselves to the playoff round of the Conference League yet again. They are always just right there, and with a good draw, could get themselves through. And then they drew Sevilla. And you kind of know what happened there. 7-1 defeat on aggregate. Sevilla were quite literally the toughest draw they could have possibly had at this stage. The only other really Leeds were also there, but I don't really know how the squads line up. I feel like Sevilla's probably a stronger squad at that point. It was horrendous. Such a shame for Hamrun, but they're right there, and the progression is definitely starting to happen, and we are starting to see the other Maltese sides improving. And I feel like with the right loan moves over the summer, they've got bigger money, they'll start to strengthen even more. I believe that this season coming, season 10, is the first year we're going to see one of them actually qualify for the group stages of the Conference League off their own backs, so to speak. But what this does do for coefficient is big things. You'll see here we are, 27th on the scoreline at the moment, but look at this, 8.375 in a year that we expected to be a poor one, given that we'd qualify for the Champions League. Great for money, terrible for coefficient most of the time. But our performances this year have carried us and seen us go to the promised land of the knockouts of Europe already. And 8.375 is crazy. If we can start consistently being at this kind of level for a few seasons, that could take us a very, very long way and crack us into the top 15 within 3 or 4 seasons. But if the other Maltese sides start to pick their asses up and get some stuff going, get into that group stage themselves, we could start to be putting down some potentially 9 or 10 point seasons before very long, and that is when the real building a nation starts. But either way, we've had a fabulous season in Europe, and it's easily the best one we've had so far by quite a considerable margin in many ways, and we've got some really bad years to come off the radar soon as well. I'm starting to suspect that we're going to see quite a lot of progress. Now, as for actual progress, because you may have noticed from the thumbnail of this video, it's not really about us making progress up the charts so much overall, but the year that we've had, we were 16th best of any team. We were above Turkey and Switzerland on the year. Turkey are 8th in the coefficients. But what it does do is move us up to 25th in the rankings going into next year. We move above Israel and above Poland. We were at one point, are we right below Norway now? Oh, god damn it. They've got us below, and not that it really matters. The difference between 24 and 25 is literally nothing, so it doesn't matter too much. Now, the next big task is 23rd, because that actually does give you some benefits of going into a different round of qualifying for the Champions League. So we get to skip a round, which obviously could cost us points too. So we're actually kind of glad not to get it this season, so we can make a bigger jump in the coming years. But I feel like next year, the target is probably going to be starting to head up towards sort of 21st place, and maybe trying to even crack that top 20 if possible. But we're really making excellent progress now, and I can start to feel everything starting to come together. Everything's just working for us at the moment anyway. Now, one thing I actually forgot to discuss was some slight tactical tweaks that we made to the tactic towards the end of the season. We had a final stretch of games without any European football, so we decided to dick about for a little bit. And the only big change we've made from the actual lineup is the fact that our libero is now set on the defensive duty, because we noticed that on support, he was getting into positions, he actually gets into the same positions on defense. The issue is that he was shooting far too much, even with the shoot less often, and you can't give a centre-back the PPM looks for pass rather than shoot, unfortunately, so that was kind of out. So in the end, we ended up moving back to defense. He still swaps around with the halfback and moves into the right positions, but now he doesn't just spray random shots from distance. He keeps recycling the possessions, trying to find our wingbacks, and I think it's definitely made us a lot more strong overall. We don't get caught on the counter as much. The other change that we made was to set pieces. We decided to finally dive into some custom set piece construction, as I felt like we weren't making the most of it, and ended up building a short corner routine that doesn't have the short corner player to receive the ball from the short corner, because we wanted to see what would happen. And we sort of ended up making a short corner where there's a free man on the edge of the box almost every single time, and he's the one that receives the ball because there's nobody nearby, and it seems to create some really nice attacking openings. To a certain extent, right? What's Jar Jar thinking? Right, okay, so he's found Melman now. Go on, Melman. Oh, this is better. Scored. We call it the long short corner, but more on that next year potentially once we keep working on it, because it's just kind of fun to mess around with this stuff. Now, you've been blessed with some incredible youth intake stuff for me to talk to you about over the last couple of years. This year was very much not that. There was not a single player worth showing. I think the best one was 3-star, maybe 2.5-star actually, PA. Absolute crap, the lot of them. We expected that, given how well we've been blessed lately. However, the guy that I showed you from last season, Matthew Saeed, is developing really nicely, and you'll note that at 17 years old, he now already has 2 caps for the full Maltese national team. Now, we were wondering why he wasn't getting into any of their underage squads, because he was way better than a lot of the other players, and then randomly, he's just now got himself 2 caps for the full national team. So I think there's genuinely a huge future for this chap to get those 2 caps at 17 years old, which is exciting. What was less exciting, though, is we've decided to finally give him his first team debut during that run of games towards the end of the season, and he decided to ingratiate himself by doing this. The only thing we were able to do is get rid of the... Oh, God. I get the feeling he was just trying to fit in. He knows what's required of him. As for the stats overall this season, I mean, you can see Melman has been absolutely insane this season. 43 goals and 54 goal contributions in 39 appearances is utterly brilliant. He has stepped up and become Ronnie Shallow who, basically. He's become him, but far, far better. The added height that he has, his passing ability, his vision, he takes the occasional set piece as well. He is genuinely superb. And obviously, he's overshadowing Henry Watara a little bit, but he still bagged 31 goals. 74 between them in all competitions is absolutely outrageous. Melman was the second highest scorer in the Champions League this year. He got 17. Only Erling Haaland got more goals than he did with 18. And the annoying thing is, going into the semis, he was 3 ahead of Haaland, but then Haaland scored 4 goals. Very disappointing, but, you know, Erling Haaland will do that. Just ask Luton last night. But lots of goals coming from around the team. And Sekou Fofana, as well as a substitute mostly, has also done a solid job as far as goal scoring. But on the assist side of things, Palacio, breakout year for him. 17 assists, becomes our top assister on the year. And you'll look, where's Vidazinha? Well, he's here. And the strange thing about him is that you can see when you look at his expected assists per 90 minutes, he's higher than the others. For some reason, players have not been able to put away the chances that Vida has created. At one point, he had like, I think it was 7 XA without registering a single assist this season. It was wild. So he's still playing at his absolute best. It's just not getting the results for some reason. And Doi, who's actually played less games than him, has bagged 15 assists of his own. Jar Jar on the left-hand side with 12. It's been fantastic. And also, big shout out to Gorey with 8 goals and 16 assists playing as the advanced playmaker, the 23-year-old. We were actually going to let him go in the summer, but I've decided to extend his contract because he just seems to suit the new setup with this team and has actually settled in quite nicely. Still missing the sort of hole left by Sangare, but it is what it is, right? As far as the way we've lined up mostly this year, it's been a straight up Watara and Melman in there, Goreyeb and Kamgra Lend with Tony Sunday in behind, Palacio and Vida, or Jar Jar or Ndoy on those spots mostly. The backline has changed a little bit. Basala and Lignon with Jurgensen generally in there as well. But Tunkara, obviously, upon joining in January, has made a bit of a spot in there his own. So we've got a little bit more strength in there. The biggest change, I would say, is the goalkeeping situation. Wisniewski has now dropped down to second choice, and he's okay with that. We've had discussions about it, and he's been replaced by Richard Guicune, who he joined us a few seasons ago as a backup, but has now developed to a stage where his stats were simply better, attribute-wise, and his actual statistics in the matches. He was saving more shots, getting a better expected goals prevented, and therefore he had to become the starting goalkeeper. So he's now got a new contract on those terms, and I think he's the guy for the future. Bernd is happy to be the backup for the time being, but I suspect he will probably be sold, maybe even in the summer, just to try and get some money in. Not that we'll get very much for him, because he's now completely worthless. Now, loan farm. The bit you all wanted to see. It's 111. We've got 111. I can't remember what it was. I think it was 78 last time, but it then went down to like 65 because obviously some players leave at the end of the season. We've got it up to 111 loans this time around. This is now cooking. And they're not bad loans either. When you look at the ability of the loans, so many players are 2-star, and that might seem like not that much, but when you think about what 2-star is, that is a top Premier League, as in top Maltese Premier League player, and that's really decent quality. I mean, you can see as well some of the potentials on some 4-star guys. We've obviously got the 5-star guy in Jean Dong Suk. There's quality out on loan, and I'm really excited to see it. And most of them as well are still very young, which means they'll be developing over the course of the year. Piaggio's banged 16 goals and 10 assists in the second tier this year for Slima, and he's getting international caps now these days. That's what the sort of level he's at. Abba Alfred does it again for Zabar with 15 goals this year, despite not playing as much. Some new guys that are going out on loan too. Fernie Teo left this summer to go to Luton and has made a huge difference there. There's just general good stuff happening across the board for the loan farm, and the quality levels really are now starting to rise, and that is a very exciting thing. Most players have had their loans extended already. I think we might be losing like maybe 10 of them will be coming back, but most of them are like crappy youth players from us that aren't actually good quality loans. I think the only one we're possibly losing in the summer is Kental of Birkirkara, so it's not the end of the world, and that makes me very happy indeed. I want to sort of be sitting at like maybe 125 by this time next season, because it does start to slow down a little bit as we try to focus on quality over pure quantity, but we want to get it started, and now I feel like it's really cooking. As for the finances, well, you can see that we've got 39 million pounds in the bank. We got 13 million for qualifying for the Champions League. We got another 12 million just for the prize money for winning games in it. We then got a further 8 million pounds for getting to the knockouts. You then get some TV money on top, which is another million, and then some coefficient money at the very end. So we've made probably like 30 million pounds just in the Champions League this year. Have spent some of that on facilities and some players, but I love the fact that our transfer budget is basically the same as our balance. We obviously cannot spend that, especially now that our players are completely worthless. We have to be hoarding this money now for the next couple of seasons to be extremely frugal with who we pick up and when, to make sure that we've actually got money enough to see us through to the future, because we can't just rely on player sales anymore. It's actually incredible. Just to give you an idea of how much the values have dropped, this is the player values you can see on the right hand side now. Yeah, for some reason these two are still highly rated, and I don't really know why, but everybody else has dropped into basically nothingness. Players like Kamgra Lemmer were worth 50 million last season. Vida was worth 35 million. Melman was worth 45. It's hilarious how much it drops off by. So we're going to be really struggling to hold on to these guys. As you can see, the wanted logos have already started appearing on them. Oh my god. If we come back next year, we've even got some of this squad, I'll be very, very happy. Luckily, they all have long-term contracts, which we made sure to do, so that way we can upset them for a couple of seasons if we absolutely have to, while we slowly hope to get the values to come back up again. We don't know when or why, but we have to hope. But the aim for season 10 is relatively simple. We want to get back in the Champions League again, obviously, and make it a third time as well to get some more cash coming in. That's step one. But we also want to keep strengthening that loan farm, because I feel like this year has to really be the year that one of them, probably Hamrun, let's be honest, gets into that Conference League group stage. But I would like to see maybe one of the others make the playoff round as well. We will need some good draws for that to happen, but I feel like they did pretty well considering some of the relatively tough draws they had this time around. So maybe just a couple of lucky results in there could start to finally see that stuff happen. I want to be targeting another 8-point season this year. That's going to be tough, of course, but I feel like it's definitely doable, because I feel like we're good enough to be a top 24 side in the Champions League, which means I feel like we should really be hitting 8 per season no matter what. But I think 9 or even 10, if the others do some magic, could definitely be on the card. And that is bloody exciting, if you ask me. So join us over on stream right now, as we are looking for potentially a new advanced playmaker, because I don't feel like Goreev is the solution long term. That seems to be our biggest goal over the course of this summer, as well as signing some brilliant players for the loan farm and some brilliant youngsters for us if we can find them. So if you have enjoyed this, drop a like, that'll be fabulous. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. I've got an agent video in the works as well, so stay tuned for that. That'll be coming out within the next couple of weeks, and I'll see you guys very soon. Hold your gun, capybara. Bye bye.